Hello and welcome back to the This is What Democracy Looks Like in podcast, hosted by me, Mary Layton. This is the second half of my interview with Toufic Sarieddine about democracy and politics in Lebanon. If you haven't already heard the first half of this interview yet, go back to wherever you found this episode and look for What Democracy Looks Like in Lebanon Part 1. As a reminder, we recorded this on August the 3rd, 2024. Let's move on to the question of, because I always do want to talk about actual voting, right? Tell me about voting. And one of the things I'm really interested in that we have touched on in terms of your circumstances is the diaspora. So who is able to vote and how does it work? Particularly, are you, as somebody who lives in a foreign country and has for a long time, are you able to vote?
Well, in my case in Japan, because we're too few, there's no ballot for us.
Oh, no. Okay. Yeah, right. Interesting.
Because we're too few. We really are too few. I mean, Lebanese in Japan, you don't really hear about it. But in other places, yes, you are able to vote. You can vote when you're over 21. Lebanon's divided into like many different sections, small like sectors and stuff like that. We have a preferential voting system as well, so that was, cute. But it also, so I can't talk about voting without talking about 2019.
Okay.
Because the parliamentary elections around that time gave us our very first set of independent politicians who are not beholden to anyone. So the Sunnis are usually beholden to Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries. The Shia are usually beholden to Iran. Christians usually beholden to the West, France and the States. But we had 10 out of 128, but still, it's a start. 10 people, very well educated, very competent, very qualified, like really reflecting Lebanon. Because we have the strongest human resources in the Middle East. You can find us all over the Middle East and like top positions. We have good schools. We speak several languages. We're known as like being very business savvy and easy to work with. So the foundations are there for a prosperity that we once had in the 60s. In the 60s and 70s, Beirut was the capital of the Middle East economy. The Lebanese lira was among the top most sought currencies in the world, along with the yen. So we do have the basis for prosperity. It's just our government mismanages them grossly. Anyway, 10 independents were voted in. These are people who are secular. These are people who are feminist. They're all for civil liberties. They espouse many I want to say Western values, but not really Western values, just like competent values, I want to say. Liberal, competent values. And many of them are doing great work. If anyone's listening, I do want them to look up Paula Yakubian.
Okay.
She's a Lebanese politician of Armenian descent.
Okay.
Because we have many from the Armenian genocide who came to Lebanon and Syria.
Oh, okay.
And she's one of their descendants. Wonderful, saintly person, strong, competent, driven woman with principles.
I will put a little link, I will say, because I always put a blog post for each episode, so I will find her name, or if you want to send me something, and I will put it in the link on that article.
Definitely.
So yes.
Definitely, yes. She's unafraid to call out, the Speaker of the House, even if he does something wrong, because he has a tendency to miscount votes on important decisions. And there's nothing anyone can do about it, but she calls them out on it.
That's crazy.
People accuse her of being strongly backed by the states. However, she also criticizes the states. So we don't really know where she gets this oomph from. But her policies on the ground and her proposals on the ground are objectively beneficial for the country. Objectively. She has this charity organization called DEFA, which means warmth, to provide clothing in the winter to people in need. She's all over the place, like pollinating these startups. You know what I mean? She's just an overall good person. I love her so much. I'm so happy she's there. She has like 9 other colleagues who are also very competent and driven and blah, 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 doing good things for the country. But they're still a minority. And the problem is that the Lebanese voter is skeptical. They're skeptical. They see that, okay, even if the independents, the independents are in, nothing significant has changed. So it's all, hogwash.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, we haven't had a secular political system where our vote matters in such a long time. And these things take time. And when the independents clash over certain issues, the Lebanese voters oh, well, look, they're clashing, they're not working, they're not doing their job. Nothing will change. We're
But clashing and disagreement is a sign of a healthy democracy.
Exactly.
Because you're not all meant to think the same. You're not all meant to agree. That's meant to be discussion and debate, right?
Exactly. The problem is that our hope reserves have been depleted.
Yes.
What little hope we had. Because we thought in the midst of all this chaos, we would elect a lot more independents. What happened is that in the South, there are documented cases of Hezbollah members harassing voters and checking who they're voting for. And who would dare vote for someone they don't agree on if they live in the same neighborhood?
Right.
It would be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Hezbollah doesn't like these independents. I find that also to be unfortunate. You guys, we have to have a state. We have to have electricity. We have to have pension plans. We have to have proper health insurance. We need these things. We don't want to be at the behest of the private sector at the banks. I don't know why Hezbollah does this. I think it's just part of their pact with the powers that be. To provide. We call it providing a Christian cover.
What sense? Yeah. What does that mean?
It means that they partner with these corrupt Christian politicians so that the Christian politicians appeal to the West against punishing Hezbollah.
I see. Yeah.
So they're the Christian cover.
Yeah. So what you're describing are politicians who are actually doing things as public servants, who are doing things to make people's lives better, which is the whole point of what a government is meant to do, right? Providing civil society. And from the way you're describing it, this is something that is unusual and that is not what they usually do, like providing pensions and health.
For the whole country.
For the whole country, yeah.
For the whole country, yes.
Yeah. So in normal life, how do those things get done?
In normal life, well, if you're well-to-do, you just depend on yourself. Right. We do have private insurance companies, but everything now in Lebanon almost everything is dollarized because our local currency is so undependable. Unfortunately, you have to have dollars to get by. Unfortunately, in the public sector for a while, salaries were still in the Lebanese pound. They weren't even updated to match the massive inflation we've had. So it's quite bad. But remember, because we have such a huge diaspora, remittances. So many remittances. So many people in Lebanon, I'm going to say almost half the people there depend on remittances on their sons and daughters and grandchildren abroad to send them some money from overseas. So it's remittances that are keeping the country from panic starvation.
Right. And it sounds
it's nice. If you have the money, it's a great place to be, I must say.
But it sounds like a lot of basic functions of the state are provided by private organizations.
Yes, of course. It's a reflection of
or just don't exist, like in the state, in the example of electricity, for instance.
Yeah, electricity is abysmally bad. People get charged astronomical amounts of money for 3 or 4 hours of electricity per day. We're like, really? Then you have to get a generator. Well, some good has come from all this corruption. We have a lot of solar panels right now.
Right. Yes.
So many solar panels. My house in the village was among the first to get solar panels. So thank you, China. And now we can talk about, this reflects actually during our economic crisis. The leader of Hezbollah said that we should stop depending on the West. We should turn to China. We should turn to the East. So this shows you how China's growing role is helping them more. For better or for worse. For better or for worse.
Well, let's come back because my original question was about voting, right? So tell me a little bit quickly about, theoretically, what is the process by which you vote?
You have to register.
Okay,
You
so
have to
it's
register
not
for it.
it's not automatic registration. You have to go and register, right? When you turn
You have to go
21.
register. Also, you can only vote for people in your vicinity, and like where
Oh,
you in your register, we call it. We
okay.
don't vote for the president.
Of course, because they're appointed. No, oh, hang on, no. How? So who votes for the
We don't
president?
vote for the president. The president is elected by the parliament.
Oh, okay. And what about those other roles, like the Speaker of the House?
Also elected by the like you elect them in, and they decide the
Ah.
positions.
Oh, so it's kind of like
Yes,
a prime minister. You elect.
kind of. Yes,
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of. And that's why it's so corruptible, because there's less people you have to
yeah,
bribe.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's not
If it
the
was
whole country voting for them. It's
if it
just.
was the other way around, you'd spend that money on propaganda.
Mm,
Oh, you know what I mean? Like in the media and stuff like
yeah,
that. So
yeah,
it's a lot
yeah.
less. Our TV is a lot less sensationalist than
So
stuff like that.
you're just voting for people in your specific area.
Yes, in my
Okay.
specific area, and yeah, yeah.
So do you
Because I've
own?
lived here for so long, I never actually have voted.
Oh,
It's
right.
ridiculous, right?
Interesting.
Because I've lived here for 8 years,
Yeah, yeah.
and back in my day, there was nobody worth voting for. Like
Right.
everyone was corrupt and stupid
Yeah, yeah.
and unnecessary. So I
So
just didn't vote.
would
And
you?
there's people who pay for votes publicly, like who do that.
Yeah, yeah. So how would they pay for them? What would that involve?
Oh, there's like scenes on YouTube of these
Mm.
like poor people lining
Mm.
up to like vote,
Mm-hmm.
and this guy's like, "Oh, vote for this party. Let me check. Oh, you did? Okay, here's $100. Next, you know."
So in the sense of how, like, because I'm always interested in like the literal like mechanics of it. Do they walk into a
Uh,
booth? How do you show somebody that you've voted for a particular person? To res-
you're not supposed to do that,
yeah, yeah.
but like there's no oversight,
Okay. So there's no
or
one
like very
there.
limited oversight.
There's no one there checking that the votes are private then.
Well, there's many initiatives to do so.
Mm-hmm.
There's many
Mm-hmm.
organizations that are like pro democracy, pro transparency, that try to overlook elections.
Yeah.
But if you go to like the South,
Yeah.
it becomes dangerous. Like people will
Okay.
go in and attack you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so it becomes dangerous to track votes in certain places.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you have pictures of like these old women being like, "Oh, what do I do?" And this employee who's not supposed to tell her who to vote for be like, "Oh, just take this person, for
Okay.
example."
Yeah.
And it's infuriating, but you know, you can't really if you try to do anything about it, you're seen as um anti-Hezbollah and
Yeah.
therefore pro West.
Right.
And it's just not the case. Just I want my country to vote properly.
Yeah.
But sometimes people who are for this will tell you,
Yeah.
oh, well, sometimes people make the wrong decision,
Right. Right. So
you
it's
know?
in a sense this is like it's we're not even on the level of talking about like the difference between electronic versus paper voting. We're talking at
Oh,
the
we're not
level
there yet. It's all by paper right now.
but it's at the level of we we don't even have like private voting booths or ensuring that the vote is private, ensuring that the vote is secure. You can't be sure that the votes are secure from one location to the other location. Somebody is not being coerced or, as you said, paid. Like there's no trust at all in the whole ballot process.
Well, I mean, if someone insists on being private with their vote, I think they can do so.
Mm.
And I actually don't really like the wording of that question, because it sounds like private electronic voting is like the thing to aspire to.
No, no, no.
But
In other interviews, I've had like really interesting discussions with people
mm,
about electronic versus paper
paper,
votes
mm,
in because there's very different views on it, right?
right.
And the thing that I'm interested in is like, what is it that people trust? In some
Mm,
cases, people trust paper much more because it's a
mm,
literal thing where you can see it. Like
mm-hmm,
an electronic vote, in many cases, it's a black box. It goes
mm-hmm.
in, you have no idea what happens to it. Particularly
Yeah.
in the US, the machines are so old and cranky, And so many people I know have had the experience where they hit a button for one thing and it comes up as a different thing on the screen.
Oh, wow.
Right. Like I had a friend.
If we had the most advanced voting machines, that would happen. I guarantee.
Right. So
like it's not the system that guarantees a good outcome.
Right.
It's people's good faith.
It's the faith, right?
Does.
So, for instance, in countries where I've talked to people, there's incredible scrutiny down to the type of pencil you use. Is a thing that's a matter of national debate, right? And it's in the newspapers, and people are arguing about it because what if you use the wrong type of pencil and that could be forged? Like it sounds like from your perspective, we are so far away from that discussion about the type of pencils.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say far as in we're behind or we're backward. I want to say different. We're different from that.
Yeah.
We're a lot more we're not a lot more chill about it.
It seems like the level of cynicism versus trust is different, because the thing that's interesting is, say for instance, in Italy, their process of going to vote is incredibly like rigid. Like there's huge amounts of scrutiny, right? But they know that whoever they vote in is utterly corrupt. So it doesn't matter, right? Right. But it sounds like for you, there's a lot of suspicion about like, well, what if people are being paid to vote? But also, we don't trust the people who are being.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of ways. Yeah. There's all kinds of ways to play the system. Voting is one. Paying for votes is one way. Actually, the Hariri son notoriously backed this way. His people were saying, "Oh, vote for Hariri and you'll get $100," because he has the capital to do that.
Yeah.
And also, I must emphasize this. This is unfortunate, but boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Like boys will do kind of like mean, dirty stuff to show that they have the cojones to the other boys. Like if someone, because like in some countries, being a good, polite boy is a good thing.
Yeah.
In other countries, being like a roughhousing, rough boy is a good thing.
Yeah.
We're in the latter department. We even have like this satirical video where these parents are talking to their son. They're like, "Son, why are you reading all the time? Go fight someone, go hit someone, please." you know.
Yeah.
It's actually in Egyptian Arabic, so it's like a sentiment across the Middle East that like the roughhousing son is better, and therefore a bad boy man is better. Therefore, some corruption, even if it's overt, is a sign of balls and machismo, and that gets you in itself some political capital.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
So like you have French would not like that. The English, the British will not appreciate that as democracy, but the Middle East still like holds up these. Oh, okay, because it's a bad boy. It's kind of respectable. Feels like completely like a good boy by the book. He's nice, but he's not tough. You know what I mean?
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but it's also well, for some people, they could find it very, very attractive. Oh, bad boy! Wow, you know what I mean? There's that kind of view about people.
It sounds a little bit like it's kind of like you can't be too straight-laced. You can't be too goody-goody two-shoes.
I mean, you can if you want to, but if you're kind of a bad boy, it's not an absolutely bad thing. You can still get political credit for it. It depends who your audience is. In Japan, that will not fly. .com.jp. It will not fly.
Yes.
At all.
Yes.
Here they are so careful about every tiny detail. They're so prim and proper here.
Yes.
They don't even have debates. They just have like individual speeches, and Japan is completely different from where I'm from. Completely different.
It's a very different idea of possibility.
It's different. Yes.
But it's. I wonder if it's the kind of. I don't know. It's a kind of like I don't think improvisational is the word I'm looking for. It's the being able to go with it.
I think it's just plain, not misogyny, but like manliness preferentialism. Like it's just if people were more egalitarian when it comes to gender, those kinds of actions would just be seen as corrupt, period.
Right. Okay.
But because it's so sexist, because there is a lot of sexism, undoubtedly. Like if a woman were to do this, she'd be tarred and feathered. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because it's a man doing it. Oh, like a man can get away with it. You know what I mean?
I
like
see.
men benefit from a lot of immunity back home. Not a good thing, of course. But it's just the way it is. Especially, and I like thinking this way.
Yeah.
Prim and proper men make for like good governments, shall we say?
Yes.
But in light of the fact that having a good government will not prevent you from being occupied by your neighbor, you need to have bad boys who don't follow the rules.
That's the concept. Yeah.
So it just, because I studied sociology, anthropology, international relations, they all like gender is such a huge part of this.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a huge part of it. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to the idea of, for good governance, you want things to be kind of boring. You want stability requires competence, which is ultimately boring. Good civil servants who are able to just get on with the job, and everything is kind of like Starmer.
Well,
like Keir Starmer is the ultimate embodiment of boring competence, right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, it depends. Well, competence depends on who you're being competent for.
Exactly.
Are you being competent selfishly or patriotically? You know what I mean? Like people would say Putin is extremely competent, but the outcome is not that good because he has values where he directs his competence towards.
Right. Well, competence in the sense of for civic society, in order to make a country work for everybody, you want someone who just
patriotism.
Yeah, who just gets on with making housing work, making
exactly
the NHS work.
I like to think Margaret Thatcher was very competent.
Yeah.
People don't like her, but I actually like her. I mean,
really?
Yeah, I do. I watched her interviews like every day in the morning for a whole year when I was doing a PhD. Gosh. I love the way she speaks, and she just convinced you of her policies. And I know that people are like, "Oh no, she was terrible. She blah blah blah." Like I mean, I get it. But two things.
I wish all that power and that competence, right, and that intellect had been directed towards less terrible politics.
Well, towards the end of her term, she was a bit like, too much with the poll tax, especially. But I think some things she did were laudable, but we don't have to get into that right now.
Yeah. So let's I want to ask you a little bit about the influence of China, because I know that's the thing that you're an expert on. And although this is not a podcast for experts, I really think it would be great to hear just a little bit about that.
Yeah, so China's presence in the Middle East is becoming a lot more pronounced. It's largely commercial for the time being. Most countries in the Middle East have their number one trading partner as China right now. This makes for cheap imports of rather good quality products. Solar panels, most of them are from China, so that's helped us a lot in Lebanon.
Absolutely, yeah.
On the other hand, China is known to not like being big on interference. It doesn't interfere in other countries' affairs. But that in itself is a kind of interference, I argue, because when you say that you want to preserve the status quo, does that mean that you want to preserve American hegemony there? Or does that mean that you want countries to be more autonomous against American hegemony? What does status quo mean?
Right.
So China actually allowed Syria to join the Belt and Road Initiative, which is its massive infrastructure program that has over 100 countries, blah, blah, blah.
Indeed,
which my book, A Tale of Rice and Copper, talks about. Syria has sanctions on it from the West. It really wants to rebuild. No country's going to cough up the money to do that. China has the one with the money to do that. And Lebanon was seen as the point through which this can be done. Because for construction materials to be pulled into Syria, you can't do it through Israel, of course. Right. You have to do it through one of the ports in Lebanon. And my master's research was about China and Lebanon and Syria, things like that. And I was arguing that this one city, Tripoli, was becoming a satellite of China via investments that it was doing in the port of Tripoli, which is a big, big, important port. I interviewed my friend at the time, the focal point for the Chamber of Commerce of China in Lebanon. And she told me that China really wants to invest in Lebanon. China can build power plants like that, like completely destroying your power problem. But it's met with resistance from the generator mafia. And the problem is that China cannot give out loans cannot give out risky loans because it's using its taxpayer money to do so.
Right.
And essentially, and Western influence is already quite strong there.
Yeah.
So whatever money it might invest in advancing its interests might not work, might be ineffective.
Right.
So China hasn't invested that much into Lebanon at all.
Yeah.
Even though Lebanon's corrupt and it's ripe for exploitation. Like if you know Sri Lanka, for example, was also quite corrupt and signed the deal with China, and now China controls the support for 99 years.
Yeah.
So Lebanon could have very well gone down that path. Unfortunately, we are too corrupt to do that. We're too corrupt even for China. Like she told me that whenever trying to propose something, this sect wanted a cut, this sect wanted a cut, and this sect wanted a cut. So it never really came through.
Right.
Even though Lebanon has tremendous potential, we were the fourth largest destination of investment in all of West Asia before our economic collapse. And because of China's growing clout, and especially now with the Ukraine war happening and Russia firmly like joining China, the Iranian the axis of resistance, we call it, which includes Hezbollah, Hamas, etc., they're looking at them as like their main bedrock of support.
Right.
And like the stars of the East are aligning against the West, that kind of situation. And some people, think that it's high time because at least, okay, yes, there are more oppressive regimes, for sure.
Yeah.
But nothing is absolutely bad. And what they're doing is providing like a counter to the West in the place where it has done maybe the most damage, which is the Middle East.
Right.
From British, French, cutting up the area to supporting Israel, to try to take over the what's it called? Egypt was invaded briefly by France and Britain in the mid 20th century to prevent it from nationalizing the Suez Canal. There you go, Suez Canal. How dare you? Go away.
I apologize.
Go away, man.
I'm sorry.
I always say British people. Yeah.
I always forget when I step outside the United States, I have to start apologizing again for being British.
Oh my goodness. I think that British people should have like sorry just on their foreheads at birth, But so China and Russia's influence will continue to grow in the Middle East, and people who are anti-West and anti-Israel. Well, a lot of people who are pro-West are also anti-Israel. I just want to make it clear. It's just we're pro-international law being implemented, period, absolutely everywhere. It's not about anti-Semitism or what have you. Like, I didn't even know what Judaism was until I looked it up. But even before that, I was seeing what Israel was doing, and I found it atrocious. You know what I mean? Like, we don't talk about Judaism. We never just... There's no show in Lebanon that's like, oh, Jews are bad, blah, blah, blah. No one says that. Like, we know it sounds ridiculous. Because in Islam and in Christianity, Jews are spoken of not in bad terms. So we just have no basis to hate them as just like a religion or a faith. You know what I mean? Like, because you have many Orthodox Jews who are not Zionist, who are anti-Zionist. So it's not coming from their religion per se. It's just one perverted interpretation of it that some people promote to benefit the American military-industrial complex and fund it with German guilt, basically.
It's painfully obvious it's never about religion. It's about occupation and empire and I want to sort of end with a question I always ask everybody. What does democracy mean to you, and do you think you live in a democracy? Well, do you think Lebanon is a democracy, I should say, because you live in Japan?
Lebanon is not a democracy because people are not really free to vote for who they choose. And a democracy is a place where everyone's voice matters equally, but it risks being a failed democracy if people are not objectively educated about the facts. Because you could have all these, like, look at the States, for example. It's supposed to function brilliantly, but because people are fed misinformation, their votes will be, I think, not in the best interest truly of themselves and of the country. So education and knowledge and information is a pillar of democracy, much more than booths or utensils.
Right. It's about the opposite of propaganda rather than the apparatus of the actual active voting. Yeah. Well, this has been extremely interesting. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can subscribe, share, or even support us by going to the website www.democracyinpodcast.com. There you can find more information about the topics discussed today, as well as updates. And if you are from a country that hasn't been featured yet and would like to be on the show, drop me a line.